Hello, everyone. We are continuing on the read. We are we're on page 131, almost halfway through the book. This book is 11th Hour Preparedness. I'm the author, Tyler Woods. It is available on Amazon. But for those locked up in this great big quarantine we're in, this is a read, and you can listen to the book. We are finishing up the section on finding water, which is the last section of the portion of the book that deals with food and water. These are the 4 F's, which is food and water, fuel, and first aid, and then firearms. So we're going to cover those 4 F's. There's a 5th F, but that's a bonus. Finding water. A person can live 30 days without food, but not much more than 3 days without water. Desperate people will kill for water, yet it is fairly easy to find if you know where to look. Water sources can be found at the base of slopes in depressions where water naturally drains. If there are no streams or pools, look for patches of abnormally green or lush vegetation and dig there. If you come to a dried up stream bed or pond, try digging at the lowest point, as the water may be just below the surface. An unusual patch of green vegetation on a hillside may indicate the presence of a small spring of water coming to the surface. If you are traveling in mountain country, look for water trapped in rock depressions and crevices. Suspect any pool of water that does not have vegetation growing around it, or animal tracks to identify it as a watering hole. Check upstream for animal bodies or carcasses that would pollute the water source. Look for the presence of green algae. Too much green algae or too much algae indicates the possible presence of fertilizer runoff and will make the water look like pea soup. No algae or dead algae may indicate pollution in the presence of toxins. Blue-green algae are poisonous. Check the edge of the source for mineral crust that might indicate alkaline water or pollutants. Insects, especially bees, don't travel more than 4 miles from their water source or their hive. Flies rarely get more than 100 yards from water, and a column of ants heading straight up a tree are almost always going to a pocket of water trapped at the base of a branch. But back then I didn't know anything about harvester ants. But typically, if you see ants going up a tree, they've found water. Birds that feed on seed and grain, such as pigeons or finches, never travel far from their water sources. They also drink at dawn and dusk. These birds fly low and straight to their water, but are heavier after drinking, so they fly from tree to tree on the way back. Birds of prey seldom drink, and birds that live on the water, often travel great distances, so they're not a reliable indicator. Animals will lead you to water also. Grazing animals are seldom far from their watering hole and drink at dusk and dawn. Follow converging game trails, as they often lead to water. Carnivorous animals get hydration from the meat they eat and are not reliable indicators of water sources. A solar still can be made by digging a hole and lining the bottom with green vegetation. Place a collecting cup at the center and cover the top of the hole with plastic. A small stone will weigh the plastic down in the center to make a drip cone. As the sun heats the cavity, moisture will condense on the plastic and drip down into the cup. It's a slow process, but will provide at least some water, perhaps a cup or 2 per day. A solar still will draw moisture out of the ground and will distill clean water from ground soaked with urine, alkaline, or salt water. Never drink any of these directly, but after distillation, they will all produce safe water to drink. Tying cloth to your knees and calves and walking through vegetation will collect the morning dew. Once soaked, water can be sucked out of the cloth or wrung out. Snow and ice can be melted for water. Select clean sources for either. but keep in mind that ice will produce twice the water for half the required heat than when compared to snow. Please remember not to eat snow or ice for hydration. The calories required to melt snow or ice in your mouth would outweigh the benefits of what little water you would get. Exchanging core body temperature for a few grams of water is not a good trade. And the quote we want to leave with is, a person can live 30 days without food, but not more than 3 days without water. That brings us to the section of fuel. Everything runs on fuel of some sort. We have become so fuel dependent that we hardly think about it anymore. Our ability to cook, drive, heat, or cool all depends on fuel of some kind. What would we do if we were completely cut off for an extended period? What kind of vehicle is best? How much fuel is enough? What are our fuel needs for over 6 months? We'll cover transportation later, but remember, driving will be almost excluded during an infrastructure shutdown. So focus on cooking, heating, and power generation and other necessary fuel requirements. Fuel comes in various forms. Most is something to burn. Some fuels store well, but most have limited shelf life. Gasoline runs cars, power generators, and rototillers. It's convenient because we buy it at service stations until they close. What many don't realize is that gasoline has a storage life of only about 3 months. After that, it either runs poorly or won't run at all. Gasoline stabilizer extends the shelf life for about 6 months to a year. Gasoline is volatile and is not safe to store in large quantities. With as much gasoline as we consume in a week, I doubt we could store a year's supply without creating a serious hazard. Gasoline for storage should be purchased in the summer to avoid expansion problems from butane that is added to winter gas for better cold weather starts. If you can purchase gasoline that does not contain alcohol, I've seen stations that advertise this, it will store longer. All gasoline for storage should be treated with stabilizer to prevent formation of gums that spoil the gas. And it should be stored in airtight steel containers. Plastic containers allow oxygen to permeate the sidewalls, spoiling the gas sooner. Gasoline is not storage friendly. I might add, you can get a good source to find alcohol-free gasoline are marinas and places where boats get their gas. Many times that is alcohol-free fuel. A more stable and safe fuel to store is diesel. It keeps 1 to 2 years depending on the type of storage container and the temperature, but keeps much longer with diesel stabilizer. It can become fouled with algae and moisture, but it is more stable than gasoline. Diesel's higher flash point makes it safer to store in large quantities. Diesel generators are also quieter, running, and will attract less attention. Biodiesel can also be made from used cooking oil or extracts from some plants. A champion of fuels is propane. Propane has no shelf life. A 20-year-old tank of propane is as fresh as it was the day it was filled. The problem comes with converting a generator or garden rototiller to run on propane. It can be done, but it takes some tinkering. Propane is perfect for heating things like the kitchen stove, water heater, or outdoor grill. For a small investment, a filling hose to refill smaller tanks from larger ones is available through propane distributors or from the internet. A used 240-gallon propane tank can be found for as little as $150, Craigslist, and will provide long-term storage if it is in good condition. When assessing a used tank, look for deep pitting from corrosion and see that the valves and gauges are in good working order. Wood is a major heat source. I might add for propane, in very cold environments, propane can sometimes become not functional anymore. If the temperature gets too low, propane doesn't gasify well and can pose a big problem. So if you're in the deep wintry places where the great white death lingers and goes well below the 0 mark, you may want to shy away from propane. It can be a problem in very, very cold weather. Wood is a major heat source in colder climates where wood stoves are practical. Others use corn-burning stoves where wood is not as plentiful, but corn is. Some have a wood-burning oven for cooking and as an alternative heat source. As always, exercise a lot of safety when working with open fire. Plans are available on the internet for outdoor wood-fired bread ovens that can be made of stone, brick, or adobe. Bread ovens quickly become popular additions to gas grills. Became popular additions to gas grills and outdoor cookery. They are fairly easy to build and work very well, but must be constructed before the hardware stores and supply centers close. Preparedness stops when a crisis is at hand. Storing fuel. Keep in mind, the 911 operator, as well as the fire department personnel, will be at home addressing their own needs, and after the power grid fails, the phones will most likely stop functioning. The thing to remember is that when crisis comes, you're on your own. The acronym YOYO, Y-O-Y-O, you're on your own. And there will be no police, fire, and rescue. Safety is paramount. Keep fuels a safe distance from the home and plan for fire suppression with emergency shutoff valves, fire extinguishers, water buckets filled at all times, and tools such as shovels and rakes. Our pioneering ancestors kept feed sacks handy to soak in water and use to beat out a fire. These sacks were sometimes fixed to a broom handle and kept handy to better reach hot flames. Keep fuel stores out of sight. As with food and water, fuel will become a new currency. Keeping fuel tanks inside a shed or behind a fence is advisable, but not close to the house. It is also wise to keep fuel separated to limit losses should one catch fire and take all fuel supplies together. Buried tanks are safest, but only when they are rated for underground storage. A good rule is to never store fuel next to something more valuable than the fuel. Generators. Generators can provide conventional power for a time, but consume great amounts of fuel and produce noise that can assist predators in locating you. Care should be exercised when feeding your house electrical system from a generator. After a December ice storm in the Pacific Northwest, my parents' home was without power for several days. After the second day, I brought them a generator to refreeze their freezers and heat the house back up. On starting the generator, it became vividly clear how noticeable the sound was to the neighbors. All the rest of the homes were dark, so they knew by one look who had power. My dad's phone rang. It was the neighbor down the street. "Okay, Jay, we can hear the generator, but did you have to rub it in with the Christmas lights?" The call was in good fun, and everyone's lights came back on 2 days later. But the point is, when all is quiet, the sound of a running generator carries a long way. Most domestic generators are only rated for infrequent use. Those rated for continuous duty are costly and still consume large fuel reserves. For long duration needs, it is advisable to consider solar technologies or other means that do not attract attention or consume fuel. Wind turbines, wind generators, are another option, but share the same problem with fuel generators. That big rotating fan on a stick makes a huge attention-getting flag advertising that you have resources. I opt for less noticeable means. Hydro generator. If you have flowing water on your property and enough elevation drop, a water generator is a good option. Water generators are compact and easy to set up. They can fit on a 5-gallon pail and consist of a water nozzle, Pelton wheel, PMA generator, and rectifier charger. From a small spring box where the water enters your property, run a 2-inch black poly water line to an elevation about 12 to 15 feet lower. That line will source water pressure to run a water gen. See the back of the book for more information. I might add that a Pelton wheel is like a paddle wheel, only the paddles aren't flat, they're cupped. And a PMA generator is a permanent magnet alternator. And they don't need an electrical source to charge the stator windings to make it generate power. Batteries. The war in Afghanistan could be lost for the want of batteries. Soldiers report the most critical supply items in their inventory are batteries. They power communications, GPS, night vision goggles, and a host of mission-critical equipment. There are a lot of battery-powered items that will be greatly missed if there isn't a supply of batteries. Batteries come in several forms, and plenty are needed. Alkaline batteries are known by the brand names Energizer and Duracell. These are good batteries, but they're not rechargeable. So once they're spent, there's nothing more to do than throw them away. Among the rechargeable batteries, nickel metal hydride holds a charge well, but can be recharged many times without developing a memory. Battery memory is a condition that troubles nickel cadmium batteries. Nickel cadmium batteries, when nickel cadmium batteries are recharged several times before they have been completely depleted, the battery develops a condition where it shuts down completely when it's drained to the memory point, even though there's still charge left. Lithium ion batteries represent the best in available technology. They have long shelf life without losing charge, may be recharged repeatedly without developing memory, and have great power to weight ratio. Lithium ion batteries are the most popular choice for defense, automotive, and aerospace electronics requiring battery power. Wet cells are lead acid batteries and come in two basic styles depending on their intended use. Inside, they have lead plates that are immersed in a diluted sulfuric acid. Electricity is stored by means of a reversible chemical reaction. Wet cell batteries used in cars and trucks are designed for high current supply for a short duration to power the electric starter motor of an engine. To get that high current discharge cranking power, the battery uses many thin lead plates. These plates can deliver high current for a short time, but are too fragile to supply continuous power. They also cannot take the strain of charging a completely drained battery very often. To power lights or other long-term needs, a different kind of wet cell is required, called a deep cycle battery. These batteries have thicker lead plates and can deliver less power, but for a long time. They can repeatedly be drained of current and recharged without damage as long as you don't discharge them below 50%. The most common type of deep cycle battery is a golf cart battery. They supply 6 volts, but 2 batteries connected in series will deliver 12 volts. I use 2 of these for domestic power in our RV. We could run all the cabin lights for 6 hours each night and only require 1 charge every 4 or 5 days. 4 or 6 of these would supply a lot of power for lighting and small fans and would make life a lot smoother after the loss of commercial power. Golf cart batteries can be purchased from Interstate Batteries in dry form. Make sure to request them dry from the factory and not just emptied. Dry means they have never had electrolyte acid installed, and these batteries will keep indefinitely until they're needed. Be sure to get the boxes of electrolyte with the batteries so they can be activated when needed. Also needed are rubber gloves, a rubber apron, and a full face shield to properly fill and maintain the battery bank. Acid burns are more easily prevented than healed. The battery area needs to be well ventilated because lead acid batteries emit hydrogen when they are charged, and hydrogen is explosive. Just think Hindenburg. With proper safety precautions, a battery bank isn't difficult to maintain and is safe. The safety precautions associated with batteries far outweigh those regarding lit candles and oil lamps. With our supply of batteries comes the need to recharge them. I would recommend a solar array and a DC to DC charger. The most familiar battery chargers are AC to DC chargers, but direct DC to DC chargers waste less power in the conversion process. Solar panels have a lower visible profile, so they are not as easily noticed, unlike wind turbines. Solar panels can charge a battery bank to run an inverter for AC power, as well as supply DC lighting after dark. A note about lights. Be sure to make good blackout curtains for any room intended to be illuminated. Uninvited guests will follow the welcome light to any house that leaves a light for them to follow. Rolls of heavy black plastic and duct tape are good items to stock. Never store fuel next to something more valuable than the fuel. Now, I might add, this was 2013. We have a lot of updates since then. Solar panels have reduced in cost, improved in production, and most importantly now, the lithium ion batteries have come down in price to the point that they are by far a better move than using lead acid batteries. The lithium ion batteries, they are a different technology, and where a lead acid battery, 100 amp hour battery, has an effective use of 50 amp hours. That means you can drain it down 50%, but you've got to keep 50% of the charge in there, because if you go below 50%, you can damage the battery and it can't handle that discharge recharge continually. So when you get a 100 amp hour lithium ion battery, you're actually getting twice the energy density of a wet cell, a lead acid wet cell. So by far, they weigh less, they are twice the battery, and where a lead acid battery will last maybe 3 to 5 years, lithium ion batteries will last 20. So there's just no cost comparison. If you're going to develop a solar system or an alternative power system for your home, boy, I wouldn't even think about lead acid anymore. I would go directly to lithium. They're not corrosive. They don't outgas hydrogen. They stay clean. They stay working. You don't have a constant maintenance program to tend to your batteries and top them off with electrolyte. The charger systems that you get for them have all of the built-in maintenance programs in them. They're just pretty much hands off. You just have a system that's going to work. And with all of the extra chores that are going to be associated with a grid down environment, having to maintain your battery bank is a nice thing to not have to do that either. All right, let's look at first aid. First aid includes all things medical, from daily vitamins to emergency surgery, both medical and dental. I don't propose that anyone become a heart surgeon via online education, but situations need a plan of action. Accidents are more likely with increased use of hand tools, and injury is more likely in the shop than at a desk. Basic first aid and wound care are first on the list of helpful training. A well-stocked medical kit will contain a large supply of bandage items, ranging from band-aids to large gauze pads and wound dressings. It should also include splint material, tapes, suture kits, antiseptic, antibiotic ointments, eye wash, tweezers, forceps, clamps, and scissors, to list a few. Plan enough supply to treat multiple incidents of many different injuries. Restocking the first aid kit may not be easy. You can hardly go wrong with a first aid kit. Blood pressure cuff, stethoscope, suture kits, and scalpels are good items to include even if you're not skilled in their use. Someone down the path will thank you for including them. Be very protective concerning small cuts and abrasions. Preventing a small injury from getting out of hand is far easier than dealing with an infection. This goes for wearing protective clothing and shielding like safety glasses, gloves, and bump hats. You may not have the convenience of a medical center to back you up. Prescription drugs. For those on prescription medication, speak to your doctor about getting at least 90-day supplies of necessary medications. The doctor may write a prescription for a 6-month supply, but it likely will not be covered by medical plans since prescription insurance rarely covers more than a 90-day supply. Ordering medications from Canada may reduce the cost, and their pharmacy controls put them on a par with U.S. pharmacies. Mexico is another source, as many antibiotics that would require a prescription in the States are available over the counter in Mexico. When it comes to having drugs on hand to fight infection, I'm told livestock antibiotics available in feed stores will work just as well for humans. I'm not an authority, but if I were fighting an infection without the help of professional doctors and clinics, I'd probably take my chances at becoming healthy as a horse. There are several basic antibiotics that are valuable to have on hand. Some fight respiratory infection, while others work better for wounds. With some basic education, you can learn which to use and how to use them. Advanced medical training is not required to learn how to properly use some basic medicine. A good book to have on hand is Where There Is No Doctor. It's a village health care handbook available at major book distributors, such as Amazon. By the way, most missionaries going to the field have a copy. If they're going remote, they have a copy of Where There Is No Doctor. That's the title of the book. And it is a very, very valuable book. Over-the-counter drugs. OTC medications are powerful tools for keeping minor illnesses from becoming life-threatening. Make sure medical supplies contain plenty of the following: expectorants, antihistamines, and decongestants, aspirin, Tylenol, ibuprofen for fever and general muscle aches and pain, Imodium AD, Gas-X, Tums, stool softeners, and laxatives for digestive disorders. Treat any illness with caution during infrastructure failure. A cold can become pneumonia, and constipation can become a potentially fatal impaction. Wounds are of particular concern. If a small scratch becomes infected and goes untreated, it can turn the body septic and become fatal. Don't wait to see if a condition will get better on its own. Treat all abnormal conditions early. Change of diet and activity is certain to alter the digestion, so make sure plenty of anti-diarrhea as well as laxative medications are on hand. It may take some time for digestion to adjust to new routines and foods. There are some very useful multi-purpose chemicals that would be helpful to the first aid kit and backpack survival kit. Potassium permanganate is a purple powdered oxidant that is available in pool and chemical supply stores. It may also be found in some drugstores. When mixed with water to a pink color, the solution works to sterilize items. When mixed to a deeper pink, it becomes an antiseptic, topical antiseptic. If it is mixed to concentrations that are fully red, it works well for treating fungal skin infections such as athlete's foot. Use caution and read all the precautions. Potassium permanganate is a powerful oxidant that can ignite if mixed with other substances. So be real careful with this stuff, but it's a pretty powerful thing to have around, and it's so incredibly concentrated in a little bottle, like in a liter bottle drinking water. Just a few granules will turn the water pink. So we're talking very concentrated stuff. Natural remedies. Many natural cures have been replaced by items in our drugstore. Let me start over. Many natural cures have been replaced by items in our drugstore. So much so that we've forgotten how to use natural remedies. White wood ash, when mixed with water, will treat a sour stomach as well as any common antacid. The woods are full of barks, herbs, and plants that provided our ancestors with a medical chest of cures, many of which gave birth to the products in our drugstores today. Books that help to identify and use these natural cures are available and will be of value when the drugstores are no longer open. The Firefox series covers a multitude of skills and crafts that our ancestors depended on. Training. First aid training is provided through the local Red Cross, fire department, or county agency. Cost is reasonable, if not free. More advanced first aid and first responder training is usually available at community college Emergency responder and EMT training is sometimes offered at reduced cost when you join a local volunteer fire department. The important thing is to begin acquiring training for responding to situations that require intervention. Everything can't be learned at once, but learning can start now. If all you do is start by buying an extra box of Band-Aids, well, at least it's a start. Just don't stop there and call it good. Keep learning, and keep moving toward preparedness. I was reminded of a quote from Martin Luther King. Excuse me, I almost forgot who it was from. But his quote was, keep moving, keep running. When you can't run, walk. When you can't walk, crawl. The whole idea is to keep moving no matter what and don't stop. And that's the way it is with preparedness. Whether you run or whether you walk or whether you crawl, it's all about keep going in the same direction. The quote we close with is, be very protective concerning small cuts and abrasions. Preventing a small injury from getting out of hand is far easier than dealing with an infection. That brings us to the next section, firearms. Civilization affords the luxury of not having to assume complete responsibility for everything. Meat comes from the market after the animals are raised, slaughtered, butchered, and wrapped. Produce is farmed, harvested, transported, and displayed for us. Fire departments stand ready to drive trucks that cost more than our home and help put out our fires. Police patrol our neighborhoods to keep us safe from those who won't play by the rules. For thin spots in our civilization where these systems prove inadequate, we may raise our own food, install smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, and employ security devices and personal firearms. If civilization as we know it were to collapse, the full burden of its services falls upon the individual. Mike Arnold of Staying Alive Incorporated puts it this way: the reason I carry a gun is because they are easier to carry than a policeman. Preparedness is about self-reliance. Learning how to use the tools necessary for self-reliance is part of it. Firearms are a necessary tool to that end. Firearms serve us in two major areas. They provide a means of taking game for food, and they keep us from becoming victims of an outside threat. This is a serious issue, and in the event of a major national crisis where the infrastructure of society fails, protecting our property and life may demand a lethal response. I'm not sure who originally classified people into the three types, sheep, wolf, and sheepdogs, but it's a good illustration. Sheep are the personality types that depend on others to protect, feed, and care for all their needs. Wolves are the predators that victimize and feed on the sheep. Sheepdogs are the protectors who guard the sheep and slay the wolf. It is interesting to note that the sheep don't often appreciate the sheepdog until a wolf appears. For sheep, the thought of having a gun or using one for taking game or personal protection may not be a happy thought. They need to get over it. Sheep end up as victims. A wolf is occupied with searching for its next victim and doesn't worry about much. For the sheepdogs among us, this chapter comes easily because we already understand the need to get food and the need to protect ourselves and the sheep under our care. I am a sheepdog, and there are grade A predators among us. Firearms for hunting. Note, gunshots are loud and can be heard for miles. Discharging a firearm should be an act of last resort in times of social disorder. Archery and trapping are very effective means of hunting game. Our focus on firearms because they serve the dual purpose of putting food on the table and facilitating personal defense. Our focus is on firearms because they serve a dual purpose of putting food on the table and facilitating personal defense. Probably the most versatile weapon for hunting small game is the Venerable .22 long rifle. It is very accurate and has low report, not very loud, which allows the taking of small game without drawing as much attention as larger caliber guns. Ammunition is cheap and available almost everywhere. Ammunition is sold. There are many different points of view concerning how much ammunition to stock when it comes to low-cost 22 long rifle cartridges. I'd keep at least 1,000 rounds, if not 2,000. It will always be good barter when money fails. I would buy hollow point ammunition for its improved hunting performance. Fairly new on the ammunition market are subsonic rounds. These cartridges propel the bullet just under the speed of sound to prevent the small sonic blast that creates a loud crack in a gunshot. They are much quieter than standard rounds, and because of their heavier bullet weight, they perform pretty well. My second personal favorite hunting gun is a 12-gauge pump shotgun. I favor 12-gauge because there are more choices of projectile, ranging from light bird shot for very small game to buckshot and solid slugs for deer-sized game. A 12-gauge shotgun with the right ammunition is a primary backup gun for bear hunting. It is versatile and formidable as a weapon. For those buying their first 12-gauge shotgun, I would recommend not buying a featherweight or light model. Recoil is a factor of energy out the barrel against the mass of what launched it. The light shotgun can deliver punishing recoil. For some, a 12-gauge is too much gun and recoil is a problem. A close second choice would be a 20-gauge, as they produce lighter recoil. Ammunition is more expensive and does not offer as wide a range of options, but it still does offer birdshot to buckshot and solid slugs for hunting deer. The range is not as good, but it is adequate. Remember, it doesn't matter how fast or how often a target is missed. Only hits put meat on the table. It's difficult to hit the target when the shooter is concerned about being hurt after the trigger is pulled. Besides 22 long rifle and shotgun, choices depend on what game is available to hunt in your area. Widely popular hunting rifles are 30-06, 308, 30-30, 270, and 243. Each have their own strengths, and there are many other choices of equally great calibers. My choices are made by how likely am I to find ammunition during difficult times. The more popular the caliber, the more likely it will be that I can find ammunition. Keeping a large supply of hunting ammunition in popular calibers will also provide good barter with those who didn't stock enough. Reloading reduces the price of purchasing commercially loaded ammunition. You may notice that I have not listed any single handgun for hunting. Handguns have dropped every game animal in the continental U.S. from grizzly bear to jackrabbit, but they're still a handgun. They have shorter barrels and do not deliver the same energy or accuracy as a long gun will. The purpose of a handgun is to keep a bad guy busy while you reach for your rifle. In a conflict between handgun and rifle, the rifle has clear advantage. And tomorrow we will pick up at page 153 with Firearms for Defense. I hope you're enjoying this read, and it's kind of fun to be reading it again after so long, and it's due for an upgrade. A lot of these things, especially the new technologies of solar and batteries and things of that sort, it's getting to the point in these last 7 years since this was last edited, home off-grid power production has dropped in price now to the point that you can generate your own electrical needs for as little as 7 cents a kilowatt. That is competing directly with commercial power generators and commercial power suppliers. Unless you're up into the Pacific Northwest where they have a lot of hydroelectric and you're in an area that is almost urban, where it is easily supplied, your costs will be lower than most of the commercial powers. So it makes good sense to be going off-grid these days, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. There's a new technology that's still a couple years out that is going to, what I hear, and it's hard to imagine, it's going to triple the energy density of even lithium ion batteries. and that's going to move electric cars right up into the fast lane. They will start getting the same range and be able to be recharged as quickly as you can a liquid-fueled vehicle. At that point, they will have broken the barriers, and I tell you what, it'll be a day when internal combustion engines will have served their place. And I'm not a greener, but I do know that the electric cars are so efficient and take so little maintenance on them. Both my son and my son-in-law drive Priuses up in the Pacific Northwest, and in all the years that they've had them, the only thing that my son-in-law has had to do is change the battery pack once, and that was because he bought the car used and he's driven the legs off of it. No maintenance on the engine, no maintenance on the motors or anything other than changing brake pads and things like that. But in that same amount of time, you can expect engine trouble, transmission trouble, and other associated problems with an internal combustion engine that generates so much thermal heat. And even the oil changes are further apart. So I can be bought when you show me a vehicle that takes that little, that gets that good a gas mileage and takes that little maintenance. I think we're seeing things to come, and I think we're going to see an opening of a massive amount of new vehicles that are attractive, functional, and far less expensive in the miles down the road. So we can only hope. So anyway, we will catch you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching.